Crazy Town is a rap rock group that shot to popularity in the early 2000s thanks to their single Butterfly, which propelled the group's debut album to go platinum. The band's story is full of tragedy and adversity, and it really shouldn't have been surprising since there was a lot of foreshadowing even before the band formed. Today, let's take a look at the history of Crazy Town and whatever happened to the group. Formed in 1995 by two musicians, Brett Mazer and Seth Binzer, Mazer would adopt the alias Epic, while Binzer would be known as Shifty Shellshock. Both musicians had an introduction to the industry early on in their lives, with Binzer's dad being an art director for Chess Records, working for Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters. His father even contributed to the cover art for Crazy Town's debut album, The Gift of Game, and Mazer's dad, meanwhile, was a music manager whose clients included Billy Joel, and at a young age he would move his family across the country to Los Angeles. Mazer's father would even take his son to recording sessions, where he was introduced to some of the best musicians in the industry, but he also saw the dark side of fame, recalling to Rolling Stone. There were a lot of addicts around. There wasn't nothing mysterious and cool about taking drugs for me. Mazer would attend the same San Fernando Valley High School as Ice Cube, Brad Wilk of Rage Against the Machine, and House of Pain members Everlast and Danny Boy. At the age of 13, he got his first turntables and began breakdancing. He would earn money DJing at black nightclubs around LA, and he would soon start his own production company with a DJ who was double his age. This success led Mazer to drive fancy cars and own his own 24-track studio, but he wasn't passionate about mixing albums, telling Rolling Stone how artists like Sheena Easton forced him to change paths in life, recalling, "She was no fun. I wanted to talk to her about Prince, and she wouldn't say anything." By 1993, Mazer was done working with Sheena Easton and began working with a hip-hop group named Blood of Abraham, who collaborated with members of another pop group named Black Eyed Peas. It would be will.i.am who introduced Mazer to Binzer. Binzer, meanwhile, went through a number of phases in his childhood, gravitating towards extreme sports, including dirt biking and skateboarding, while later becoming a punk rocker named Romeo, and then a breakdancer named Paco, while also becoming one of the few white kids to partake in freestyle rap competitions around LA. Binzer would earn the name Shifty Shellshock for his criminal behavior, including shoplifting at an early age, telling Rolling Stone, "I've always been dodgy. When I was younger, I was a shoplifter and then a graffiti artist. When I got older, I was a little shady dealing with women. I'd always be juggling a couple of them." He would go on to explain how he tried to rob a fellow drug dealer who was bad-mouthing him, and it resulted in Binzer being chased by the police and eventually getting away, resulting in him becoming one of LA's most wanted. But the police would eventually get their man, arresting him at a 7-Eleven, with him recalling to Rolling Stone, "We got surrounded by cop cars at 7-Eleven. I was on Fox 11 News for an extra week because they couldn't find one of my friends, so they had my picture with captured over my face." Binzer would end up serving 3 months in prison, being relegated to the part of the jail typically reserved for murderers. Binzer would tell the LA Times, "Until I got caught for everything, I kind of felt like I was this invincible, Biggie Smalls badass comic book character. All of a sudden I went from using drugs to being a drug addict, and it turned from robbing people and beating people up, because that was the thing to do, to going to jail for it." Mazer and Binzer would collaborate sporadically with each other, but the fruits of their labor would be intermittent, resulting in one song being created every 3 to 6 months. Binzer would tell Spin Magazine, "We do one song every 3 to 6 months. To celebrate finishing one of them, we'd party our asses off by getting high as hell." It would be this excessive partying and lifestyle that soon hampered the group's working relationship and productivity, while at the same time providing inspiration for their music. Binzer soon made a living becoming an extra in Hollywood productions, as well as starring in Levi's commercials and promoting clubs, while also, of course, selling drugs and stealing. By 1997, both Mazer and Binzer would do their separate stints in court-ordered rehabs, and the following year they started cranking out demos for their new project, Crazy Town. And they eventually hooked up with a childhood friend of Binzer named DJ AM. The group would also add guitarist Rust Epic to the lineup. By 1999, they had their demo to shop around to major labels, and rap rock was extremely popular, so it couldn't have been better timing. They would eventually sign with Columbia Records, who put out their debut album, The Gift of Game, in November of 1999. During the tour to support the album, the band opened for Motley Crue drummer Tommy Lee, where they met a punk-inspired guitarist named Squirrel, who was working as a soundman for the Motley Crue drummer. Epic would leave the band while Squirrel would take over on guitar duties. Crazy Town's label would hold on to the song Butterfly, choosing not to release it as the album's first single. And by Columbia Records' own admission, they tried to capitalize on the popularity of bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit with the first single Toxic, which represented a more aggressive side of the group. They followed it up with a similar sounding song in Dark Side, but both singles fell flat. Mazer would tell the LA Times, "If Butterfly would have been our first single, rock radio wouldn't have broken it. We had to build a foundation of fans that were going to be down for us regardless of that song." Binzer would tell Rolling Stone the origins of Butterfly, revealing, "I wrote a bunch of lyrics and told Epic, it needs to be like Under the Bridge, really pretty mellow." He looped part of the Chili Peppers' Pretty Little Ditty. "The lyrics are about my ex-girlfriend. We were together 3 years and the breakup almost killed me. I was doing drugs, I was relapsing, and we were driving each other mad." The woman who inspired Butterfly would appear in the music video, with Binzer telling the LA Times, "It's a song that a guy could feel cool enough to say to his girl, 'This is our song.' I think the realness of it and the fact that I wrote it about a girl that I really cared about comes through," he would say. Butterfly would blow up on hip-hop radio and rock radio almost a year and a half after the group's debut album came out. The song would top the charts in 7 countries, including the States, and one of the biggest stations to promote the single would be LA's KROQ, who jokingly took Crazy Town to task over their zealous use of the word lady. Program director Lisa Warden would tell Spin Magazine, "It's all in good fun, but it's like, who besides Lionel Richie says that?" With such crossover appeal, how did Crazy Town view themselves? Well, guitarist Squirrel would tell Spin Magazine, "Brett and Seth are and always have been hip-hop kids. They weren't rock guys who happened to like hip-hop. Crazy Town are a hip-hop band first and foremost," he'd say. To support their debut album, Crazy Town would tour with both Buck Cherry as well as the Red Hot Chili Peppers and appear on the second stage of Ozfest in 2000. While the band should have been relishing in the opportunities, the group hit a rough patch during Ozfest, spending only a week on the traveling tour. Binzer's relationship with his girlfriend would end, and he would relapse and destroy his hotel room, tossing a chair through his window. As a result, Crazy Town's management pulled him off the road and sent Binzer back to rehab. It was a volatile time for Binzer, who admitted to Rolling Stone that once he got off the road, his destructive habits continued, revealing, "I went on a destructive rampage and disappeared. My mom called Anthony Kiedis and said, 'Seth's effing up.' He's a buddy. The Peppers are a huge inspiration to us. Anthony found me and took me to lunch, where I tried to borrow money from him so I could get high. I didn't finish my rampage for a couple of days, but he showed me that I had people who were worried and cared about me. Anthony's this angel who appeared in my life," he'd say. Following Binzer's visit to rehab, Crazy Town would get another shot at Ozfest the following year. The band would also ready their follow-up single, Revolving Door, which was in sharp contrast to Butterfly, promoting promiscuity. Binzer would tell MTV, "Revolving Door is about being young, being single, and having a great time, and then at the same time being like, what's the big picture? What am I looking for?" By September of 2000, Crazy Town would be caught up in a report the Federal Trade Commission released at the time called Marketing Violent Entertainment to Children. The FTC found that labels continued to advertise, and I quote, "explicit content music on television programs and in magazines with teenage audiences." The report took aim at TV ads for groups and artists including Blink-182, Crazy Town, Rage Against the Machine, DMX, and Ja Rule, and the report went on to point fingers at the labels for not putting parental advisory stickers on ads marketing their artists. Following the album cycle for The Gift of Game, Crazy Town soon turned their attention to their follow-up album, as they would tell MTV that it would be quite different from their debut record, exploring more hip-hop sounds. Crazy Town would write in excess of 30 songs ahead of their stint at Ozfest 2001, and at the end of the tour they hit the studio with P.O.D. and Motorhead producer Howard Benson. Weezer frontman Rivers Cuomo would even contribute a guitar solo on the song Hurt You So Bad, with Binzer telling Rolling Stone, "Rivers was sitting there backstage. I walked up and said, 'You probably hate my band, but I just want to say I'm a huge fan of your band.' And he said, 'I don't hate your band.'" Binzer would acknowledge to Rolling Stone the pressure the group felt on their follow-up record, revealing, "We have a lot to prove because of Butterfly. We have to prove we're aggressive punk kids, a real band and not a pop act. If a band like Crazy Town can get into the top 10, that's one for alternative rock, and that's one more spot that Britney Spears can't have," he'd say. Crazy Town released their follow-up album Dark Horse in 2002, but it seemed like the record label dropped the ball on marketing the album. The first single, Drowning, was sent to radio stations, and it proved to be a modest hit, peaking at number 24 on the Modern Rock Tracks chart. But that was basically it for the album. The label didn't know what path to take to promote the record, and had no promo tour stateside. Dark Horse would end up selling a paltry 13,000 copies in its first week, landing at 120th on the Billboard album charts. Mazer would look back telling MTV at the album's lack of success, "We were more than Butterfly, and when the second record came out, and it wasn't a hip-hop crossover like that song, and the label didn't know what to do with it. Apart from the lack of support from their label, the band would also cite issues with their management, with Mazer telling MTV, "Everyone seemed to love the album, and then our management signed Shania Twain. We came back from Europe and it was almost like the record was dead before it started," he'd say. Following the disappointing performance of Dark Horse, Crazy Town would break up in 2003. Mazer would tell MTV regarding the band's breakup, "It's a lot easier to manage working on your own than as part of a band with 6 people." Following the dissolution of the band, Mazer formed his own production company named The Pharmacy, while guitarist Russ Epic formed a new group called Pre-Thing, but he would sadly die of a heart attack after the group's debut record, 22nd Century Lifestyle, in 2004 came out. Binzer meanwhile pursued a solo career, contributing to the track Starry-Eyed Surprise, which was a top 40 hit in America. And in 2007, Crazy Town would reform, but with a new backing band to support Binzer and Mazer. Sadly, on August 28, 2009, former member DJ AM was found dead in his apartment of an accidental drug overdose. The group would put out a new album in 2015, harkening back to their original name, Brimstone Sluggers. In the years since they reformed, Binzer would struggle with his sobriety, appearing on season 1 and 2 of Celebrity Rehab and 1 season of Sober House. In 2012, he would also end up in a coma due to an overdose. In January of 2017, Mazer announced he was no longer a touring member of the band, but would still possibly write with them. Binzer would eventually add an X to the band's name, and whether this was a legal move or something else isn't entirely clear, but he would tell a fan on Instagram, and I quote, "The X is used by gangs to symbolize a territory that has been won." In November of 2019, Crazy Town's van hit a moose during a tour stop in Canada, and the band members largely escaped unharmed with bruises and cuts. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe, and we'll see you again on Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.